Tonight, once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Koberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Nancy Guthrie abduction. Deb from our mods, she actually sent me a couple of pieces of audio that we're going to be listening to. Mainly it's from 911 dispatch to, I believe, officers, also a bolo that was sent out. So we'll be able to get to hear those things and kind of give us an idea of what it was that law enforcement knew early on, what it is that they were telling other law enforcement agencies, and maybe a little bit about the scene as well. So please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Probably not going to be on here too long. Maybe, depends. We'll probably do some Q&A afterwards, and we'll see how far that goes. But like, comment, subscribe, guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to listen to is the original 911 dispatch call, and some of the bolos. They're all pretty much the same thing. It's just different. It's different departments that are saying it. So it's just the same bolo. But without further ado, let's listen to the original. I believe this is the original dispatch call, and then some of the bolos.
All units stand by to copy a safe alert. All units copy a safe alert. It's going to be authority from Pima County Sheriff's Office.
Actually, I guess they are all bolos. So this is just basically the bolo that went out. What a bolo is like, be on the lookout. In this scenario, it's for Miss Guthrie. So these are just the bolos.
All units stand by to copy a safe alert. All units copy a safe alert. It's going to be authority from Pima County Sheriff's Office, last name at Skyline Drive in Campbell. Occurred on yesterday's date at 12:15 hours. Subject last name of Guthrie, first of Nancy, date of birth 1/27 of 1942, 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue, last name wearing unknown clothing description. Subject was not seen at church, and family went to the residence, and subject was not at home. All personal belongings, including a 1021 and wallet and vehicle, were still there. Subject is nowhere to be found. Subject suffers from limited mobility and has medication scheduled to follow up and needs daily. If located, check for 20 and contact Pima County Sheriff's Office. Again, last name at Skyline and Campbell in Tucson, and a safe alert at 12:35.
And that's basically what it's going to be over and over again. I was listening to it. I thought the first one was the actual call out, like, hey, we have a missing person report, but it wasn't. Not on this one. Now, we do have some other clips that are to the officers that we're going to be listening to, but this is from the second day, referring to the day before. And we already kind of knew some of these things, right? The mobility issues, the medication, and that she needed it daily. We find out that she goes to church, didn't arrive at church. And then her family who go to her house to go and check on her. They're not, she's not there. They call 911. So that's basically, in my opinion, I think that's going to be all that comes out of it. We'll hear a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure that's all it is.
Stand by. There's probably one item need to be safe alert. One item safe alert will be out of Tucson, Skyline, and Campbell Avenue. We're on February 1st, approximately 12:15 hours. Subject A, Nancy Guthrie, date of birth 1/27, 84. female, 5'4", 150 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, lips.
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing over and over again. So if you want to listen to the rest of it in the different bolos, you can go check that out at Moms for Justice. They got some subscribers there, so go check them out. The next one we're going to listen to is from Juanita. I think that's Adam. And she actually went and listened to some of these, the Broadcastify, and pulled out some clips from the from that day so that we could hear some of the what was going on. Now, she has some dates and stuff listed on these recordings or these clips from the dispatch from 911. However, she even says that she's not 100% certain of the timing in them, but go check her out. She's got about 2,000 subs. Let her know that you found her through the Drunk Turkey Show. But let me pull up that video real quick. So I took some clips out for us, so that way we can just listen to the clips. But she did an excellent job on it. Here it is.
Hey, can you check for any transports or hospitals, please?
It might come in low, so I'm just going to repeat what they said. Can you check priority transports or hospitals? So again, these are dispatch audio between police department there in Tucson and also the 911 operators. And this is them trying to find her in different places. Because remember, family thought that she may have not necessarily left on her own, but something happened and like a medical emergency. She contacted, 911, I would assume, and then an ambulance come and pick her up and take her to the hospital. And so that's what they were initially thinking, because doors were propped open. There was blood leading outside. She's an 84-year-old woman. Not many people go right away to, okay, she's abducted. So they were obviously checking
For any transports or hospitals, please?
I'll be 1060, the missing person as well. Also, I texted everyone that's working a OLN photo over.
It's 1060, the missing person as well. That just means that that officer is going to be there at the location where everybody's looking for the missing person, or wherever that headquarters may be, and they're passing along the information. Pretty self-explanatory.
After you've checked the property thoroughly, let me know if you want to get search and rescue involved.
So what does that tell me is that they were kind of maybe perhaps thinking or leaning towards that she wandered off on this first one, on this clip here. Let me back it up a little bit. Again, she mentioned the creator in this podcast that the times aren't exact, but she estimated it to be 12:30. And from what we understand is that law enforcement, from sources, that law enforcement initially thought that Nancy had maybe perhaps wandered off, and that's what they were going with at first. Now, of course, they can't overlook that as a possibility. They're going to have to go down that avenue. But this is them doing at least that. Check the property thorough. And then we'll see if we need search and rescue.
Involved.
17. If you want to stick to the neighborhoods northwest, 842, you can take the southwest, and I'll stay on the east portion on Campbell neighborhood.
Try not to disturb any of the items in the house. We're getting a hold of a scent tracking dog, so try to stay away from the blood outside and anything inside the house that could hold a scent.
You notice in this part, so it says, try not to disturb any of the items on, inside of the house. We're getting a hold of a scent dog, stay away from the blood outside. And anything inside of the house that could hold a scent. They don't say that there's blood inside of the house. Stay away from the blood inside and outside of the house. So that's not said. Right? This is Savannah, the family, and Ellie did think she wandered off. Savannah didn't think that they wandered off. Savannah came out, and it was in her interview. What they thought was that she left on on her own accord, in the sense where she may have contacted 911 and paramedics for a medical emergency, and paramedics came and picked her up. Not necessarily that she wandered off in the sense of like into the desert or anything like that. More so that she left on her own to a certain extent because of the medical issue. The law enforcement did, apparently, according to, I guess News Nation, Brian Enton and his sources, were that they had thought that she had wandered off, and they were going off of that, and that was kind of at a dig at the officers and the detectives that were there, because it was, I think, at the same podcast where this person had mentioned something to the effect that the lead detective had never worked a homicide case. And my thought process at the time is, well, I get it. People are going to ask first and say, well, why was there a homicide detective there? Apparently, in that department, the way it works is law enforcement or homicide detectives automatically go to missing persons reports. That's who responds. That's who takes the report. That's what happens when there's a missing person like that. It is homicide that arrives. Now, if you have a missing person, I would assume that the homicide detective that's going to arrive is probably not going to be your top shelf guy at that moment. You know what I mean? And in this moment, I don't know if they knew who Nancy Guthrie was, and if that this was going to turn into this high profile crime. So this is just, if you're going through things that day, you get a call for a missing person, probably going to send one of your younger detectives out there. That's probably what you would expect them to do, to get some of that experience and stuff. I would expect that things would have changed after the severity of how things went down that night start to unfold, right? It's the evidence comes in, and you start to peel that onion, so to speak, and you get past those layers, and you start to see what really happened, and you start getting more evidence in, the video comes in, etc. So at that time, I don't fault them for sending an inexperienced homicide detective, but that's, what happened. And at the time, I don't think they knew that a homicide had occurred, right? So if they did, if they thought that this was probably more of a, something clear cut, a serious crime, you're probably sending a more experienced guy out there. I say that knowing that Detective Payne was very inexperienced in the Idaho case, and he was also, put in charge there, and it is what it is. So sometimes those things work for whatever reason, but I would have anticipated in this scenario, they probably, or in most scenarios, you probably put in more experienced detective out there. But here, what do we have here? We have that they said, do not disturb any of the items in the house. They're getting a scent dog, and they don't mention blood inside. And it doesn't sound like it says anything inside of the house that could hold a scent. They're not speaking about a specific scene, right? Like they did outside with the blood. So he's speaking about a specific scene outside with the blood, but not a specific scene inside. And if we remember what Brian Enton said, he said that he believed that, or he was told at least, that the rest of the house outside of the entrance was clean, or was clean. Not necessarily cleaned, but that it was clean. I think that, there's a good possibility that this perpetrator may have been out there for a little bit longer than we know. And God knows how long he had, what he could have been doing. And one of the things he could have been doing, because remember, he had a big backpack and a lot of things in there. Could he have had cleaning supplies and stuff like that? Lysol, bleach, just a disinfectant spray. Just to kind of go back and clean up the areas that he knows he was at. Doesn't have to clean up the entire house, just the areas that he went into, the things that he touched. Right. Now, I say that with also knowing that he left the mat outside, and he also left the plants out there that we know he touched. I think it was a big loss that law enforcement didn't pick that up, but we've said that before a few times. But back to this. I think by this point they're realizing, well, I mean, even if they thought she wandered off, if they still couldn't find her, you're still going to go try to get a scent tracking dog. So this doesn't necessarily mean that they think that she's been abducted, or that something more nefarious outside of her wandering off has occurred. That's probably it.
Can you start checking any adjacent properties to see if anyone's got cameras that might be facing this way? Family here does not have access to the cameras on the property.
Now, this one is interesting because I've seen a lot of people question this. Oh, why didn't the family have access to the cameras on the property? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't have access to my parents' cameras on their property. I don't know if my brothers do. I don't have access to my brothers. I mean, let me know in the live chat or in the comment section. Do you have access to your parents' camera system? Now Miss Guthrie is older, and so you might want to. That scenario might be a little bit different, right? Because she's a little bit older. But if they didn't even have a subscription or things of that nature, I don't understand why some people would look at this and think that this is a big deal, that the family does not have access to the cameras on the property. You know what I mean? And like, it wasn't like she had like ADT or any of this thing. She had Nest, right? And now let's just say that her family also had their own security system or a Nest security system as well. Can they monitor somebody else's security system and their own at the same time? Or do they have to be logged into one and not the other? You get what I'm saying? Now, having the code and the key to the alarm and things of that nature, 100%, because you visit and it's common and you may need to go in there, et cetera, right? But access to their cameras, I don't think that's a big deal. Now, we know now regardless, they didn't have a subscription, but it sounds like, maybe Nancy's family probably either didn't know if she did or didn't, weren't privileged to that, and may have thought that there was, right? Because if they were aware that, oh yeah, she doesn't have a subscription anyways, I mean, they're still going to get them. They're still going to take them and stuff. But I don't know if, and again, maybe just, we could look too far into it and we don't want to. This is just a statement left on, by an officer trying to get other officers to quickly go and ask other people for their camera systems to see what they got. I wish we got the result. How many cameras in the area? What did they capture? Now, I'm concerned about this because we know that they went out and got what's his face's Carlos and Daly's vehicle, and they searched both of them. Both vehicles, although both squared, are vastly different, including the side profile, which you would expect, surveillance systems on houses facing out towards the street. What are they going to capture? They're going to capture the side profile of the vehicles. And so, you have a van without windows, but has a big decal with letters and stuff. And then you have a SUV that has quite a bit of windows. In fact, on a Range Rover on the side, probably, unless the Range Rover is black, you're going to see like a dark windows, shaded out. I used to have a Range Rover. And so it looks almost like half of it is black, but it's not. It's just the windows going all the way across. And so, with that being said, two very different vehicles. I struggle to believe that law enforcement at the time of those searches had video surveillance of a vehicle, and they search those vehicles. You know what I mean? Now, just because the guy's driving they could have been driving a different vehicle that night, etc. But and you're going to want to check all their vehicles. But it seemed like they focused in on the van, and they focused in on the SUV for daily. And so, this seems like an upper class neighborhood, wealthy neighborhood. I would assume there's cameras all throughout that neighborhood. Why haven't we seen more? Especially if they don't have anything. I would understand if they had something, right? And they were working on something, and an arrest was on the horizon, right? I understand then why, you would hold back some things because you don't need to put everything out there anymore. But that doesn't seem to be the case in this situation. In this situation, I don't think we're any closer today than we've been at any point in this investigation. Well, I guess we were further away when when law enforcement was searching daily and Carlos's, property and things of that nature because they were looking in the wrong direction. And so with that being said, maybe we're a little bit closer because we may not be, focusing on anyone, but I struggle to believe that we're any closer than we've have been. And why not put out more information? Look at what happened in the Idaho case. They put out the Bolo, or not the Bolo, but the Hyundai Elantra. Brian Koberger panics to the point where he gets into a altercation with his professor that ends up resulting in his termination, and he flees across country with his vehicle that was not planned in efforts to get his vehicle, in my opinion, out of the area. And so if you put something else out there, right, like a vehicle or a description or something of that nature, maybe perhaps you'll accomplish the same thing. You'll get somebody to panic, somebody to make a mistake, somebody to flee. And then that might hopefully alert somebody. I still struggle how people weren't, that were close to Brian Koberger at Washington State University, that were, understanding of the problems that they were having with him. And especially when the Bolo came out, if they knew what he drove, like how they weren't putting these things together. It's kind of beyond me, but it is what it is. But it caused him to panic and flee. I wonder what it would do to this guy if they release more. They released the video of him, and it's quite a bit of information. You got to see very closely what he was wearing that night. If you compare that to what we saw in the Monique and Spencer Tepe case in the Cincinnati, Ohio murder of, was it dentist and his wife by Miss Monique's ex-husband. They had a video of him walking through the alleyway when he was the perpetrator walking towards the house. And I thought it was weird, and I brought it up. I was like, it's weird because I can see cameras on that doorbell over here across the street. And you can see, and when we went on on Google Maps, and we went in first person on the ground there, you can see cameras around. And I was like, it's weird that they released this one. It's weird that they released the one that was farther away, almost in an effort to just appease, the public, because people were asking questions. This was going on 2 weeks before without an arrest, etc. And so I thought, maybe perhaps they do have something and they're about to arrest somebody, but they want people to chill out. Or maybe perhaps they wanted to see if he would do something similar to like what I said about Brian Koberger. Put out a little bit of information. They probably got a good idea of who it is. They're watching him, see if he makes a move, makes a mistake. He tries to flee. He does something, some of that nature. And so they put out something there, but they don't give us much. I mean, there's cameras that are closer. And I think that the reason behind that is because they had something very strong and they had a case. But that's not the case in this scenario here with Nancy Guthrie, because if that was, we probably would have had an arrest a long time ago. We're like 18, 120 days now that she's gone missing. It's quite a bit. And you have the team that is taking in tips and following up and things of that nature getting smaller. You have Cash Patel throwing Sheriff Nanos under the bus, basically trying to say that, hey, if this doesn't get solved, it's because it's their fault. And so that doesn't scream confidence to me. That doesn't scream confidence at all. That tells me that they are no closer at solving this case than they have been at all at any point. Because if they were, Cash Patel wouldn't be throwing the sheriff under the bus, wouldn't be saying, hey, it's the mistakes that they made is why we haven't solved it. Instead, it would have been like, hey, you know what mistakes may or may not have been made. We're confident in the investigation that we have.
To the cameras on the property.
Hold on, I accidentally pressed play. We're confident in the investigation that we have. We have an arrest coming soon, something of that nature. There's no point in throwing, the other department under the bus unless the writing is on the wall and this is going cold. That is the only reason why you do that. That is the only reason why you throw another department under the bus. Even if everything they say is true, that Nanos messed it up, he screwed up, blah, 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 blah. If the FBI got involved and they took over and they got any closer, there's no point in throwing anybody under the bus, even if it's true and right that they messed up. It just makes you look arrogant, makes you look like, oh, yeah, these guys, even though they messed up so much and screwed up, we got it right, we got it fixed. We're going to go out there and we're going to get this arrest done. We have somebody, and we have their name. Even at that right there, you would think that still says confidence while throwing them under the bus, but that's not what he said. What he was saying was what sounded like this is going cold and it's their fault. And I don't like that. And so that tells me a lot about this guy. It tells me that, and Cash Patel can say this, oh, the FBI, if they, that the, Pima County Sheriff's Office or Sheriff's Department screwed up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what? You're the FBI. You got on scene, 2 days afterwards? It's not like you got on, that you guys started this investigation weeks, months, years later, days later, you were involved. You guys are involved in the DNA. You guys are involved in the cell phones. In fact, I think you guys would have been the ones to take care of much of those things anyways, especially the geo fencing and all this other stuff. They still can't figure it out. Pima County Sheriff's Department couldn't figure it out. Savannah Guthrie has hired a $500,000 private investigative team, or at least spent $500,000 on a private investigative team. I don't think there's an arrest yet. Now, maybe they're getting closer, and I hope that's the case. But let's be real. If it's not, then does this really sound like a bumbling fool or an idiot? I don't think so. I think this guy's more intelligent. I've been saying this for a minute. I think this guy's more intelligent than we're giving him credit for. And I think the faster that we come to that realization, maybe we can come to an understanding of who this person is, what kind of person this could be. And once you get onto the right profile of this, then maybe perhaps you can see things for what they are. You don't want to end up being blind because you're like, oh, no, that is, this guy has to be an idiot. This guy has to be this. This guy has to be that. That's how you end up like Moscow Police Department with the Brian Koberger situation, where they were still looking at drug dealer angles, even though there was no evidence of drug dealing. All outside of party tricks inside of that house, not to the nature of taking the lives of 4 people. And the thing is, that investigation kept coming back to nothing, from what I understand. And it's because, and to me, and even you can even look at it in this case here, but to me is, you have the audio from next door in the Brian Koberger case. It doesn't sound like it sounds like somebody went in there quietly. You hear barking and you hear voices, but you don't hear, the sound of rage. You don't hear, somebody who has lost it because they're drunk on roids or any of these things that people, like to have these favorite theories about. And no forced entry, leaving doors open. There's a lot of things there that made me think right away, would have made me think right away that this was something that was not a message. This was somebody more diabolical. And I'd been saying it for a minute because I said it I think 2 weeks after the murders. I was like, hey, the fact that they didn't arrest the boyfriend or this or that, this is probably somebody not very close to the circle. This is somebody outside of the circle. And sure enough, that ended up being the case. And in this case here, you have doorbell camera missing. You have floodlights bludgeoned. You have blood outside. A person that can't move and no sign of her within 100 yards in any direction. And you really think she's going to be able to walk further than that? You know what I'm saying? So you can get, I guess, stuck in your own denial there. But I think the evidence was there right away that this wasn't something other than an abduction. Well, anyways, I'm done with my tangent. Let's continue. Wait, hold on. The FBI has officially taken over all preliminary liaison duties and direct contact with the Guthrie family. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah.
On the property. Kane inside, they were able to get into the phone. Also, Kane is here.
All right. So this one's interesting. Now let me go back because it says inaudible. Let me see if I can hear who it says.
Also, Kane on the property. Kane inside, they were able to get
someone inside. They were able to get into the phone.
Also, Kane is here.
And I don't know what cane is here. I don't know if they're talking about like her walking cane or if this is a cane. When I was in the Army, there was a Sergeant Kane who he wasn't a drill sergeant. He was a pretty cool guy though. But everybody would mimic his voice. He had one of these voices that anybody could just mimic. It was crazy. Well, anyways, Kane, could that be the dog? Canine? Is Kane is here? Could that be the dog? Could that be a walking cane? Could that be a person? I don't know. I don't know. But they were able to get into the phone. I'm assuming that's her phone. Nancy Guthrie's phone. And Kane is here. If I had to take a guess, I'm gonna guesstimate that's the K9 team. Is what Kane is here. I think some folks thought maybe that meant walking cane. And if it is, I mean, that's an interesting thing to say, right? I mean, unless there was other messages relaying to like her mobility and her having a walking cane, right? And then if that was the case, like, hey, did y'all find the cane? And then this was, came back. Oh, Kane is here. Then maybe. But because if we hadn't heard Kane is here, then, or if we hadn't heard about a walking cane in anything before this, I highly doubt it's walking cane. Now, what we have heard is that they said that the canines are en route. And so saying that the canines were en route, I think that means that this is the canine dog. You know what I mean? So Kane is here. Him telling also dispatch could be for logging references, so that dispatch can log the time so that you can go back. Also, this was very common when I was in law enforcement. We used to do this too. So that way we can log our times and stuff. So that there is a log. And so I wonder if that's what that is. Because, there really isn't anything here that says anything about canes or like walking canes, but they do say that they're going to get that they're getting a hold of a scent tracking dog. So we do know that they are bringing dogs in. I think the unit cane is canine. But if it's the walking cane, let's go down that avenue. How does that work here, right? That tells me that one, that this person probably, I mean, he struggled. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. The back door was propped open. Most intruders exit and come through, their exit and entry point is going to be the same. It was propped open. I anticipate that his plan was to go out with Miss Guthrie out the back door. I think that the mobility was an issue. I think he struggled with the mobility. And I think that's why he changed his mind and went out the front door instead. Now, if he was aware to the extent, and one of the things reason why I think he changed is because he overestimated her mobility, or underestimated her, or the lack of mobility that she had. I think that, granted, I believe that he restrained her, so that would have made it impossible for her to use a cane anyways, right? We look at the blood outside. If it is in fact coughed up blood, there isn't a handprint on the ground. There isn't a blood spray that left a handprint on the ground, which would have indicated that she had her hand on the ground when she coughed. She didn't put her hand down to lift herself up. So I would assume that she was restrained. So that would have made it improbable for her to be able to walk out. But somebody who knew about her mobility issues, do you think they would have planned for that a little bit more? See, this kind of goes back to why I think also that this person maybe isn't too familiar with Nancy like that. I think he may have watched her. I may have stalked her for a period of time, but I don't think he was intimately familiar with her. I don't think this is a family member. I don't think this is somebody that went to church with her. I don't think this is anybody that knew her personally on that type of level. And to me, I think this goes back to, I think this is somebody who is probably infatuated with Savannah one way or another, whether it's by anger, by sexually motivated, by some other means. I think that's where the focal point. I think he found a way to get to her through her mom. Mary Schultz says, not dog canine, a walking. I understand that, everything says that, but why would officers say Kane is here to dispatch? Kane is here to dispatch. I don't understand the reason why they would say that to dispatch. That's not something you would say to dispatch. That's not something dispatch would be asking. That's something that detectives would be, and that you would be, talking directly, whether that be like a phone call, maybe even on the radio. However, you would hear detectives asking for that. And we don't hear that. That's not part of that. So what would be the point of regurgitating that the cane is there without being asked that information? And there'd be no reason to tell that to dispatch. I was a police officer for a few years, and that's not something I think I would have expected myself or any other officer. And I trained officers too. I was an FTO for a short period of time. I was a field training officer. I don't know the scenario where, you're not being asked that. If a detective showed up and left and said, hey, I'm looking over here. I'm seeing all these pictures with her walking cane. Does she have a walking cane with her? No, yeah, the cane is over here. That's the only time I can kind of picture this scenario going down, but that didn't happen in here. And so dispatch you would use for also logging certain things. So you would notify dispatch, hey, detectives have arrived on scene so that they can mark it down. You get a time frame, everything else. Detectives arrive. JP has arrived. JP is the justice of the peace judge, coroner, canine unit is on scene. Fire department is on scene. These are all things that you would tell dispatch too. So I just don't see why they would tell dispatch that the walking cane is there. You know what I mean? And if you needed to talk to a detective, they probably call you if you were on scene, because they don't want all this stuff out there either. You know what I mean? So I think he's referring to canine as being Kane being here. But I could be wrong. Let's see.
Kane is here.
Negative. Jane Doe is on all the local ERs and hospitals.
And what that is that they're them just doing their due diligence on looking at the hospitals to see if there's anybody without, Nancy's name, obviously, or without a name that maybe has shown up confused, don't know who they are, or deceased without an ID. And so that's probably what that means, and that they didn't find anything. But yeah. Try to express them that she did not leave on her own. So you think that the police officer, but here's the thing, if that's what he's trying to say, then say it. You know what I mean? That's the other thing too. Like, when I was in law enforcement, we would on the radio, the walking cane is here. I don't believe that she left on her own. Is what you would say in this scenario. You know what I mean? To me, this sounds like an officer telling dispatch so that they can log down the time of when Kane arrived. Now, I'm assuming Kane is the canine team, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, we didn't have one in our department. We had a department that was very close to us, and then we also had the federal guys who had a police dog or a canine unit. And then after I left, I want to say about 3-4 months after that was when we got like 3 of them. And so when I at the department that I was in, and so I didn't work with them. Every time we needed them, we would just contact, hey, we need a canine unit from FBI or Border Patrol or from the sheriff's department, and they would bring them over. Now when they arrived, guess what I would say? The canine unit is on scene, but not everybody calls them the same thing. So I can see them calling them Kane. But I think that that's the only reason you can think of mentioning it. Yeah. But I would just think that if it was for something like that, then just say it. Like, there's 10 codes in law enforcement, right? Where you have some 10 codes. And the reason behind that sometimes is because of people listening, but also because of like speed and stuff like that. You want to get some things in and out, but that kind of went away a long time ago, and they wanted people to talk more naturally, at least when I was in law enforcement. Now, I did hear him say they were 1060, or he was 1060. 1060 is different. In my department, it would have been 1023, back in the day, which was like on scene. And so everybody's different. One time I was talking to Border Patrol, and they told me that they had a 1046. And I was like, so? He's like, man, it was great, dude. We had this 1046. It was crazy. 1046 for us was an animal on the road dead. Right? It was roadkill. 1046 for the Border Patrol was a high-speed chase. That was a 1080 for us. So everywhere is different. Even like law enforcement, different types of things are different. So that was one of the reasons why some departments, at least in Texas, they were wanting to go to common language. Let's see. I'm wondering if he was answering someone and his radio was keyed on. I don't think so, because he says the word also. Kane is here. So let me see.
It's a property. Kane inside, they were able to get into the phone. Also, Kane is here.
So I think he's talking to the same person. Now, could he be, having a hot mic situation? Maybe. I'm going to have to go and listen to Broadcastify and see what dispatch stated afterwards. So dispatch stated 10-4, Kane arrived. Then that's just documenting what time that they're there. But if it is the walking cane, again, then that kind of leads me more to believe that this is somebody outside of the circle. This is somebody not too familiar with Nancy and underestimated his or her mobility. And this is something that was reported by Michael Roos not too long ago. Here's the latest from Pima County Sheriff's Department on Nancy Guthrie investigation. Detectives are not yet done with the home security footage. Forensic analysis is still underway. Same with DNA, according to the department's spokesperson. No dead ends yet. Has anyone been ruled out? PCSD refers back to the sheriff's prior statements attached below. The intruder has not been publicly identified. Current and former investigators tell me there's still hope someone recognizes this guy. He may have changed his behavior or appearance after Nancy Guthrie abduction on February 1st. And again, after the FBI released the Nest video on February 10th. So this is exactly what I'm saying, right? So they're saying that he may have changed his appearance or something after the release of the Nest video. Release something else. If you're expecting that there be some sort of movement, and if all you're hoping on right now is that somebody's going to recognize this guy, release something else. And if they don't, it's probably because they don't have anything else. And that's what concerns me. And that has been one of the things that has been concerning me for a while about this case. He remains unclear. It remains unclear whether he acted alone, anyone with information. I'm fairly positive he did. Let's see a statement from the sheriff. To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, have been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I am begging you, the media, to honor your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism. And this was, I think, shortly after, people were really starting to hound some of the family members. And so they re-released this statement again. This is the statement we want to say as far as anybody being cleared. The family has been. I personally think that they definitely have been. I don't see them as suspects. I know that there's been a lot of people that do, and people look at them with a magnifying glass. But this was made, and I think there was some questions here. So church was available at 9 a.m. Tucson time. First responders arrive at 12:15. 12:17, can you check priority transports or hospitals? And the question to me that came out was, why was 911 called so late if she missed church at 9 a.m.? And my response, because I wanted to bring this out because people were like, how long was the service, etc. Well, we found out on the bolo that I played early on that the family arrived and she was gone. So let's play this out. If you're going to church or you're going to a function and your friend doesn't show up, are you calling 911 that second? I don't think so. Right? I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. She wasn't feeling good. She'd had some bad days. That's what Savannah had said. I wonder if she had been going to church every weekend. Maybe she had planned to be there. Maybe she told people she was. But given her medical status at the time, I don't think it would be unreasonable to believe that if she had a bad morning that she wouldn't go. And so I don't think you're calling 911 right away. I think you're reaching out, like, hey, are you feeling okay? Are you doing okay? And then as church goes on, she doesn't show up, as she doesn't respond. I think then that's when things start to alert. And then, if I know my when we go to church with my wife and her family, after church, everybody congregates afterwards. My wife's family is really connected to the church. It's called Omega Church out here in San Antonio, Texas. Go check them out there on YouTube. And afterwards, everybody congregates outside. The pastor comes out and talks to everybody. His name's Ronnie. And everybody talks. I can probably assume that that's probably the same thing in a lot of churches, and probably the same thing here. And so this is just me spitballing. I have no proof of this at all. But after church, I'm assuming is when, they're getting together, talking to each other. I haven't heard from her. Have you heard from her? Then they contact the family. Then the family has to go out there, right? So how long that takes, plus they get there. Are they calling 911 immediately, or are they looking around trying to find her? Call the hospitals at first. Hey, is Nancy there? And especially if they're thinking that maybe there was a medical emergency, maybe that's what they call first. Is the hospitals, did she get there, or is she there before? Now it's a 911, first responders are there, missing person. So just because it took a little bit of time, I don't think it means something nefarious. There's this notion, I think, and maybe it's because of daytime TV, that things happen really, really quick, and that's not how real life is. Did she watch the live stream at her friend's house? Oh, there you go. Well, thank you for letting me know that. Well, even at that, if that's the case, right, they're probably still going to message her, right? They're still going to try to reach out, and then reach out to the family. Like, hey, she didn't show up. We're concerned. But at the end of the day, if she had a bad day, she still may not have shown up there. Hey, what's going on, Flo Jim? And so I just don't think that they're going to call 911 right away. I think they're going to be like, hey, are you okay? What time are you showing up? I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't show up too. But what are we going to do now? We're going to go blame her friends too, her elderly friends. That one of her elderly friends is behind this. I wouldn't be surprised. Let me put it that way. I wouldn't be surprised if some people do, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And law enforcement checking transports and stuff like that. Again, just because, the Guthrie family called, and, they can say, hey, we called all of the hospitals and they said that she wasn't there. It doesn't mean that they're not going to go do their due diligence and do it themselves as well. They're going to take that information and say, okay, we get it. Thank you. But they're still going to have to make sure and investigate that, because also the whole Jane Doe situation there. Kane, as a program nurse, some agencies use acronyms like community action neighborhood enforcement, criminal activity neighborhood enforcement, or similar structures for community policing terms. It could be. Canine has several different meanings in Arizona. LA Canine Unit, most like, also possibly. There you go. And see, I don't think that they didn't, right? I think once they saw the blood on I think they probably did. But, they also saw the doors propped open and stuff like that. So they're, they thinking, could there have been a medical emergency? They probably called 911. Hey, did, somebody come out here? what she picked up. And maybe they're not calling 911 per se. Maybe they're starting off with the non-emergency line. But they thought initially, and most people are going to think this. Most people are. I mean, most people don't automatically jump to, I think somebody abducted my 84-year-old mother. Right? Like, unless there's like some real serious clues there right off the bat, but not there really wasn't. You had the doorbell camera missing, but I'm assuming that they knew that it was there or that it had been there. Um, are they looking at that? Is that something that catches their mind? Family members and police officers, I hold to a different level of expectations. I don't expect family members who are untrained to notice small details or notice any details, especially in a moment of panic and anxiety and stress. All right, when somebody's missing, they don't know where they're at. That can cause a lot for your judgment, for what you're seeing, for your perception, and things of that nature. Law enforcement, they don't have an emotional tie to that. They should be able to go in there and notice those things. So that's kind of where I put those things into play. At that age, families tend to fear the worst. If you can't get a hold of them, you worry about going to their house in case they have passed naturally. I don't disagree with you there. But when is it that they got notified, right? What time did they get notified? And what were they doing the night before, right? Like if Tommaso gets back home and he stays up late and, him and his wife have some drinks or whatever the case may be, and they don't tend to wake up early and they don't hear the phone ring or their phone's on silent or something of that nature in the morning, and it took some time for somebody to get a hold of them. I mean, those are some things that are possible, right? We can always look at things from, as an armchair quarterback or an armchair detective or whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, we could have done this or could have done that better. But, in those moments, we got to take into consideration everything, right? And also what we know and what we don't know. Now, I think that law enforcement are missing a lot of information about this case, but I think when it comes to who they've investigated, as far as whether that be the family members, Carlos, Daly, all these other guys that they've really gone into, they know a lot more about them than they've put out there. And they have a lot more information and evidence that's either exonerated them, which I think they probably have found in all situations, or something obviously that just kind of doesn't align with them being possible to have committed the crime, which is exonerating them. Do we know the cameras weren't missing? The audio only said family does not have access to the cameras. Missing would have been a huge issue to make them stop and think it was something nefarious. Well, they didn't know that at the time. You get to the scene and you see the missing doorbell camera. You're going to ask, if you're law enforcement, you should ask the family, okay, there's this, doorbell camera holder, bolted into the wall. Was there a doorbell camera? And if they say, yeah, she had one. Okay. And then you see the lights in the back busted up. You ask them too, right? Like, is that normal? Or had that been not there? Or was that, normal before, or was it broken? If they say, no, that wasn't broken. And you have the blood, the open back doors. Nobody there's no 911 calls, nothing like that from the residents requesting medical assistance. There's nothing at any, hospital or anything. I think it turns very quickly into something nefarious. Right. How could you not see that right away, in my opinion? But you got to make those phone calls. You got to make sure that she didn't, get dazed and confused, wander out into the roadway, and somebody else finds her and doesn't know who she is. And then they call, emergency services, and, she goes to a hospital as a Jane Doe. right? It was not a call to the house. It was a call somewhere else by somebody else, etc. And so those things are the things that you have to make sure. And unfortunately, those things do take some time. But seeing the camera missing and the floodlight smashed up should be a pretty big tell, in my opinion. Let's see. They don't have any small children to be up with either. That's true. That's true. And like I said, and again, they've been basically cleared. Um, well, they have been cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. And for those that say, well, what about the FBI? The FBI isn't clear. The Sheriff's Department's the one that's doing this investigation. The FBI is helping them, right? Now, if this goes into a scenario where they find a reason for the FBI to take over, let's just say this guy crossed state lines, crossed into Mexico or something like that nature, then maybe perhaps that's a different story. But at this point, this is still Pima County Sheriff's Department's investigation. The FBI is assisting them. So it's not like, you can say, hey, that would be like, gosh, I can't even think of a scenario off the top of my head, but if the main department that's investigating, that's responsible for the investigation, has cleared somebody, then every department that's working alongside them help them come to that conclusion, right? And I would assume that would have been the case in this scenario. Now, I was listening to Josh from the lab, and he had on Dr. Bucato, and they were talking about ICAC that went out to the Guthrie residence a couple of days or maybe a week or so after Miss Guthrie went missing. And a lot of people were alluding to the fact that, who they were, they were the best when it comes to trying to surf phones and communication and stuff like that for child stuff. And, there was a lot of speculation at that time. Oh, they're investigating Annie and Tommaso and this, that, and a third. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, we don't know everything. We don't know everything. And well, come to find out, there was this one weird guy who was trying to cash in on everything. And he actually made contact with the Guthrie family and gave his account for Bitcoin and wanted ransom money. He ended up getting arrested. I don't know what his name is, maybe Derek or something like that. He got arrested. I think he's out on bond already, but he got arrested. Now, he contacted the Guthrie family. Now, in order for him to get arrested, there would have to be an investigation. And the investigation would have gone in the means of contact. And so if he texted them or emailed them and they picked it up on their phones or their computers, guess what law enforcement have to do? They have to go and investigate it. And they did a damn good job because they found the guy and they arrested him. You know what I mean? But they had to go and do their job. And the sad thing is, when you don't know everything, but you jump to a conclusion, that's when you hurt the wrong people, because you don't know everything. You saw an investigation occurring, or people saw an investigation occurring at the house and jumped to a conclusion that was solely because these people were suspects and these people did something wrong. I mean, you saw something, but you went the wrong avenue because you don't have all the information. I don't have all the information, which is why I don't blame anybody unless I feel comfortable when all the information is out there. But in that scenario there, we don't have all the info. And what was happening was that these people were being targeted and law enforcement were having to investigate it so that they can make those arrests. And instead, what a lot of people did was create more victims and kick people while they're down. And that's sad. That's real sad. But that's the world we live in, People want to jump to be first, not jump to be right. And go off of speculation on things, and it's just not cool. And we don't have all the information. I mean, I get it. I speculate too, law enforcement did this or that or whatever, but I feel bad for the family. You know, I've talked to victims' family members, and this goes years, back when I was a police officer. And so, I've looked into the eyes of somebody who's hurting because something very tragic happened to their family member. And I could never, in my wildest dreams, look at that same person in the eye and accuse them of something without absolutely knowing the kind of pain and hurt that they're probably going through. Some people can. It's weird. Oh, nice. Cat. That's pretty cool. Where's the innocent until proven guilty anymore? Seems like it's gone. Well, I mean, yeah, no, I get that. To me, it's more about because I was blaming Brian Koberger before he was found guilty. I ain't gonna lie. But to me, there was a lot more information that was out there. There was evidence that was out there that it was in a PCA that was real, right? That we could see. There was numbers behind it. There wasn't just a cop car pulling up to a house. You get what I'm saying? And then people jumping up to a conclusion of what that cop was doing at that house. There was, all right, this guy did this guy did that. This is what his phone activity did. This is what his phone activity was doing during the time of the crime. This was his DNA, where it was found, what it was found on. I mean, there was a blueprint of things. We don't have that in this case for anybody to go in there and point a finger in one direction. You know what I'm saying? That's different. The jumping to conclusions even happened to the PD, blaming them for not IDing Kaylee right away. They weren't able to. Also, people deeming PD for not notifying roommates. They're not allowed to. That's true. I mean, that comes with, unfortunately, that comes with a lot of ignorance, right? Where, and when I say ignorance, I don't mean stupid, and I don't mean anything negative. I'm ignorant to a lot of things. There's a lot of things I don't know, and it's in in one of my videos, the intros. You don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? You can be Albert Einstein, but if you put Albert Einstein in a room and said, all right, Albert, I want you to compete with, this guy that, I don't know, has done, I don't know, maybe this is a bad thing, but something he's never done, football. and try to tell him the game of football. I mean, maybe after a while, and maybe, once he learns the game and goes in the ins and outs of it, that'll be one thing. But the moment that he, you just throw a football at him, don't tell him the rules, don't tell him anything, he'll struggle. I mean, anybody would, right? And so you don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't know what they don't know. And then the sad part is there's some people that know a little bit of something and think they know everything. I'm reminded from the movie, what is it? Oh gosh, it's not Turbo Man. It's Jingle All the Way. And in that movie, they're waiting outside, and it's Sinbad, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they're waiting outside for the toy store to open. And Sinbad is talking about this conspiracy that the toy store has to sell product because of Christmas or whatever, right? And he goes, I know what I'm talking about because I took 2 semesters in junior college. I'm in it. I know. Reminds me of a lot of people. This case is bizarre. But I think that there's enough information there to kind of point in the direction of what this person might be like. And I think law enforcement are in there. They said that they think this was a targeted event, but that people are probably should stay vigilant, and that what did they say? Something about the fact that it could happen. Not I don't know. I got to look back, but it alluded to that this was targeted, but not I don't know. This could happen to somebody else. I forgot what it was. It was a weird statement, not a weird statement, but it was a statement made by Nanos about when they were talking about it being a targeted event or not. And the way it kind of read off to me was that, yeah, this was targeted, but that other people could be targeted as well, or this person may strike again kind of thing. I think that's possible. Do I think that this is a scenario that's a one-off? No. I think this guy, if this is the first time he's done something like this, I wouldn't be surprised if he does it, if he's going to do it again. He definitely is going to do it again if he doesn't get caught, stopped, or hurt himself. But, yeah. Someone at CrimeCon alleged Koberger has $40,000 fund for an appeal. I don't know. I guess you always can appeal. I think that if something really did come forward that said something different, but the guy is not going to appeal. This guy is looking at all the pro burgers as if they're beneath him, that they couldn't figure him out or figure it out, that he did it. You know what I mean? I don't think he looks at these people as people that are like his fans and that he wants to go and hang out with them and stuff like that. This guy thought he was smarter than everybody. And so, yeah, he probably would have, I would say he would probably want to talk more with like doctors and like Dr. Picata, Dr. Vona, Dr. Catherine Ramsland, those type of folks is probably, to get into the mind and try to tell people why he was so smart and all this other. That's probably how you get him to talk, right? Is by stroking his ego and making him think he's smarter than everybody. Because that's what he thought, right? But he wasn't. He was an idiot. Let's see. Did you hear that Savannah's hired PIs in the tune of $500,000? I have. I spoke about it earlier. And that's one of the things that I was saying. I was like, look, you don't spend $500,000 overnight, right? It's not like, all right, here's $500,000 today. The investigation started today. It sounds like she's spent $500,000 to this point, which means an investigation has been going on for some time. Now, how long? I mean, it's only been 100 and some odd days, so it's obviously less than that, but probably about, I would say, 2 months or so, if not a little bit more than that. About 90 days, maybe 3 months. Maybe she started talking to other investigators because it's, you would expect something like this. Maybe not expect, but what is the rule? Like 48 hours for these crimes to get solved. And so after that, she's probably looking into it. So she's probably been paying quite a bit for a while. I would say at least 3 months. And so you have the FBI that are now looking into it, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and Miss Guthrie's $500,000 private eye investigation, and they've not been able to uncover this guy. I'm telling you, I think this guy is a little bit smarter than we give him credit for. If he is the ransom note guy, right? Like if he wrote the ransom for the two that first came out, who has contacted the media in the past? Like, I don't know of any kidnapper that has. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't. Those that have committed crimes who have contacted the media in the past are those that have committed some pretty crazy crimes like BTK, Zodiac, etc. These were sadistic people that were living out a fantasy. Part of that fantasy was not being caught. Now, I don't think that these guys committed their crimes just so that they could taunt law enforcement. I mean, even Rex Humerman, to a certain extent, maybe not taunted law enforcement, but definitely did the family members of his victims. And to a certain extent, we see this guy walking up to the front door. And I've told you guys this, and the back door being his exit and entry point. If that was the case, there was no point of him walking out in front of that door. I talked to Jen Coffindaffer. I hope you guys have seen that episode. But she mentioned, when we were talking about the jammers, she mentioned, well, if there was a jammer, then there would have been, we would have known that because of the pacemaker. And me not thinking was like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? The pacemaker didn't connect. It would have disconnected if there was a jammer there. But that's not true. You can have the pacemaker works off of Bluetooth, not off of Wi-Fi. You don't have to have Wi-Fi for the pacemaker to be connected to your phone. You know, I didn't think about it until afterwards. And just like I didn't think about it until afterwards when I asked her about, when we were talking about the left-handedness of the and I love Jen, by the way. I'm not talking negative about her. But when I was talking about how the perpetrator may have been left-handed, and I asked Jen, I was like, hey, if I shine a light at you, what hand are you going to lift up to block your light? And she goes, I'm so right-handed, I'd lift up my right hand. What I should have said was, but that would leave you vulnerable. Because if you're truly right-handed and your gun is on your right side, you're not lifting up your right hand, because that's going to put you in an uncomfortable position to draw your weapon. You're going to leave your dominant hand and the hand that you're going to draw the weapon out of closest to the weapon. So you're going to block like this and be prepared. That's why when he walks up and he's doing all his nonsense, the perpetrator, I'm telling you guys, this guy's left-handed. I'm telling you guys, he's left-handed. Like everything tells me he's left-handed. Let me pull it up so I can tell you what I'm showing. And so like the first thing that you can see is the first step that he takes too. He's right along the border here. Let me show you something real quick. All right, here we go. You see his first step is right there along the edge here on this border. Second step is right here. You can still see his first step close to the border here. Second step. Third, and then the fourth one is passes the center part. But look behind here. You have the stepping block here, and you have the rock here. That's back there. That's back there. Let me show you something, guys. That's over here. There's that stepping stone. Here's the rock. His first step is right here. His first step is right here. Not back here. Not coming from back here from the driveway. He's coming from right here. Right? So he had just came from probably checking that window, coming around this side, and parked right here. Now, why is it important that he parked right here? Because if he parked here and he walks this way towards the back end of this direction, he's going to go to the driveway that's right here. And there's this wall right here. You see this wall full of rocks? At night, you try crawling up this wall full of rocks. I don't think so. Even with a light, that's going to be that's not smart. You're not going to want to do that. And so if you continue to walk this direction on the driveway, you're going to end up in front of the house right here. Right. And if he ends up coming up this direction, his first step isn't right here. He's going to be seen on camera approaching here from the middle, but he's not. He's approaching from this direction. And so the back doors are open. He had no reason to walk this way unless he wanted to be on camera. No reason at all. None whatsoever. Entry and exit was the back door. No reason to go up in the front. And I think if we go back to the ransom notes that he may have written, the first two, if he wrote those two, why would he do that, right? First, he contacted the media to create a spectacle. Again, BTK, Zodiac, these are the people that you're looking at who contacted the media. All right, these are fantasy-driven crimes. Him in the front there. I mean, Savannah spoke about how terrified she was when she saw his face and knowing what her mother woke up to. I think that's what his goal was. Kind of like the Rex Humerman. tormented his victim family members. So I don't think this was ever really about ransom. And then again, also, this person sends out, and I found this out by Jen Coffindaffer, that he sends out the ransom notes immediately, I think the day after that she goes missing, Nancy does. And then when he doesn't get a response, or they don't even air out that information, then he reaches out to TMZ. Only then is when he reaches out to TMZ. And when TMZ does not air out the actual note, he ceases contact. A lot of people say, well, no, Daniel. It's when he, they ask for proof of life. Like, I don't think that's it. Because if this was financially motivated, and we just heard how much Savannah Guthrie has spent, $500,000 on an investigative team, she must know that they're not going to bring her back alive. So she's spending money so that she can bring her home, so she can, put her mother to rest. If you're financially motivated and you're seeing the money that she's paying, you're not going to try to reach out and say, hey, I'll tell you where she's at. Even if you have no intention of actually saying where she's at, you're not going to reach out and say, hey, your mom didn't make it. I'll tell you where she's at if you paid this amount of money. And then only when I get that money will you get the information. And then you're probably going to be like, well, how do we know that you are who you are? All right, well, I knocked down this, or this happened, or on the bed, this is what was seen, or this was the clothes that we have that she was wearing. This is what's missing, right? Something to that effect. And that only the person that took her would know. And you could give that information, take your money, and then never message her again. Right? And leave it all in the past. You've gotten paid, whole 9 yards. That's what you would do if this was financially motivated. I also don't expect, the kidnappers to reach out by media. It just doesn't make any sense. That's automatically guaranteeing that law enforcement is going to get involved, and that this is becoming a situation where all eyes are on. Everybody's looking at the Guthrie. So it's not like you can reach out to them and tell them to do something. I mean, granted, they were telling him to put money in a cryptocurrency. And so, but you're not contacting, ensuring. What if they had questions, like simple questions like, hey, tell us something that only you, the perpetrator, would know, and we'll send you the money. But they don't have an avenue of communication because they went through the media. So I just strongly don't think that this is financial motivated. What's going on, Jade? Thank you for being a member for 3 months. Appreciate you. How many different DNA were found in Anna Kemper? I'm not entirely sure. I'm familiar with the case. I know what happened, but I'm not familiar with it. Gotcha. The Gonzalez did an interview with a YouTuber. I know you're talking about Scott. Can't remember his channel's name. He mentioned $40K and that it can be used to pay restitution to the victims. Has to be protected for appeal. Crime talk. There we go. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of all that stuff, but Brian Koberger ain't appealing anything. Is there a porch light on? I'm curious. I don't know. Oh, and no, I don't think there is. Right here, I do not think there's a porch light. Myself and Steve from True Crime Web, we've been working on a couple of things, guys. we actually, I think we might have a pinpoint time of when this actually occurred based off of his shadow, the moon position, and his height and the width there of the sidewalk that me and Steve are working on. In fact, right now I'm going to go and do my part of the test here in a little bit to determine accuracy. But be on the lookout for when I have Steve on, because we're going to talk about when this actually happened. And we think it happened at a much different time than, maybe not much different time. Let me reframe that. We think this may have happened at a slightly different time than what they may be claiming. Might be misleading some people, but in a good way, and why would they do that? I'll answer this. Why would they do that? Probably because they don't have much. When you don't have much and you have a high profile crime and you have people like, go look at the John Benet Ramsey case. How many people confess to that crime? When you have high profile crimes, you're going to have people that do false confessions. You need to hold on to something so that way you can validate that they are saying the correct thing, right? That they are the correct person. But if you're misleading people about what time this happened, that can affect your tips. Now, it's not by a lot, but I think we can pinpoint what time this occurred. But hey, I'm going to be doing this here in a little bit. Hey, what's going on, Flojo? I thought I saw you earlier. Maybe it was a different Flojo. Good to see you, buddy. We need to do a show together, man. But stay tuned for that. I think you guys will be impressed by that one. Oh, thank you. I love the Turkey channel. I appreciate that, Miss Chanel. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Well, I'll do a little bit of a Q&A. If you guys have any questions or thoughts or theories, we'll do this for another 5 minutes or so before it gets too late. Put a couple of stars out there so that I know you're talking to me, and send them my way. Let me know what you guys think. Put a couple of stars. Do a little bit of a Q&A. Oh, different flow, Joe. Different flow. Okay. I thought you guys were the same. Even I make mistakes. No one is going to think she was abducted at first. I think it would take some time. I think so too. I think it would take at least a couple of minutes or a few. You also have to remember, people who are going through this are going through a lot, right? There's anxiety, there's stress, there's anxious, there's nervousness, there's fear. There's a lot going on that can kind of make your thought process, can hinder it. 100%. Put a couple stars. Please hit the like button. I would appreciate it. Don't forget my other channel called Married to the Hobby. It's more on Pokemon stuff. We're doing a couple of giveaways there. Let's see. Good to see everybody. As a safety concern, a family member should have access to. Are you referring to the camera system? I mean, possibly. I mean, I get the idea behind it, that family members should have access to security cameras and stuff like that. But I don't know how that is in practice. I don't know very many people that do have that. Now, in the Guthrie situation, it's a little bit different because Miss Guthrie's 84 years old, has some mobility issue, has some medical concerns and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that she, that she's okay, that you have something that you can monitor that. But I mean, if she's an independent person and she's like, no, I'm independent, I don't need you guys hounding me or surveilling me and stuff like that, then, it's a tough situation, right? But then you also have to factor in their own security systems, and do they have to log out and log into hers to check hers? And how often would they do that? Would they feel a need to do that throughout the night? I don't think anybody's really thinking someone's going to, break in and abduct her like this. Now, people get complacent. People get, you know, feel safe when they've lived in a place, and sometimes that can backfire and things like that. They leave their back sliding glass door open, or in this scenario, maybe a back door open, etc. But yeah, I just, um, I don't know. I don't know how many people do that, which brings me to what I was thinking of, with the cocaine thing and stuff too, that we were talking about earlier. If this was a family member, right? Why go through all this? This would have been so much easier, right? All you had to do is you still park on the side, still go through the back door, right? And then go inside, and then wake her up and just tell her something like, hey, something happened to somebody. We need you to come real quick. And then, have her assist you going out. Open up the garage door, go out the garage door, leave the garage door open. Who cares? Right? And then get in your car and leave. And then you can do whatever it is that you wanted to do. You don't have to do all this. In fact, I mean, if you're trying to get some sort of insurance claim or any of those things and she just disappeared, it might, if you're probably in the same scenario that you are now. You don't have remains, you don't have a body, and she's gone. So it doesn't make sense to go in there and put yourself on camera with a mask and all this other stuff, and then to do something to her inside of the house that would alert her into wanting to defend herself, which would cause whatever, the incident that resulted in her bleeding out the front door. You wouldn't need to do that. So just food for thought. I thought Koberger, as part of his plea, gave up his right to appeal. Yeah, he did, but there's always, like, with the legal stuff, there's always something that you can appeal for. I don't think he'll ever get an appeal. I don't think he'll ever win an appeal. This is more people putting in money there just to put in money there and putting it under under that scope so it doesn't go to anybody else. How would the perp know where the cameras were at the back of the house? I think he broke them while Nancy was at Annie's and waited for her to come home. See, that's the thing. I don't think he broke all the cameras in the back of the house. I think he only broke one. I don't know if I have them on here. I hope so. So he broke, I don't know if he broke these or not, but he may have. But no, so there was a solar panel and there was a camera right here. Now, this was already taken off. There was a news footage of law enforcement taking off this camera. This camera faces the backyard. The back door was left open, and at 2-something, there was a notification for some movement. We can, I think it was at 2:12 a.m. We can attest that that's probably this camera because that's the one that's still left on the house. And if this guy was that familiar with this house and familiar with Nancy, and if he was breaking and destroying or taking other cameras and lights, why would he leave this one open? And the other question that becomes is, why wasn't he caught on this camera? Right? Because according to, and again, they could be misleading, law enforcement being them. Law enforcement can be misleading us, etc. But if they, why they made it seem like they don't have footage of anybody walking around at 2:12, just a notification. Why isn't that being captured? Right? The other camera had the same scenario as this camera. No subscription, no, everything the same. But yet the doorbell camera, they were able to pull information from. Now, I can assume maybe this is a different system. I would doubt it. I think you'd want to have all your cameras the same so you can check them, but it could be. But he didn't break this one. And the ones he did break, were, I think, just the doorbell camera and then the floodlights themselves. So those lit up, and I think that's why he broke them. Yes, Married to the Hobby. Please go check it out. He missed too much. Gonna be. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for watching back. My parents are healthier than me, and I have them on Live 360, have access to socio phone, security cameras, homes, everything. If someone did something, I would be able to track it all. But I don't just do it. It's good stuff. I mean, I think more people should. I just feel like a lot of people don't. I'm too smart for a criminal. Not a criminal. Oh, got you. The 40K was donated on his books. The money is protected. You can only pay restitution by working in prison. That's wrong. Yeah. He could still try ineffective counsel. I guess that's the only thing that he could, but I don't know. I thought it was just the floodlights in the back. No, there was this camera back here as well. It's just kind of hard to miss this not being there. Here it is. This is them taking it off, and here's the camera before they took it off. See, we had seen just the camera plate. This is actually the camera, and they took it off. And this is what he did to the floodlights. See, there's that rock wall also, another image of it. So no way he's walking from here to here. He's no way. He's coming from right here. But I'll ask you guys a question. If his plan was always the back door to come in and out of, why would he be walking in the front? And there's the empty pot there, which was kind of crazy because there was an empty pot used to open the back door or keep the back door propped open. See, this is what I was talking about. If he parked here and he came this way, he has to go all the way around. There's so many rocks. It would have been very difficult to walk through that in the dark, especially in that area where there's no light pollution. And this is the back door being propped open still by a pot. So I think he was checking the windows and then came around this way. Just like that. That kind of looks like a shoe print right there. And this is when they did the tent up there. I guess they were doing something forensic. But you see, there's no way he's walking up this way like that to come that direction. You know, through the rocks. If he's coming up the front, you see the rock walls. He would be approaching this direction from here, and he'd be on camera quite a bit before way over here. So he's definitely coming from the side. That's the rock wall I was talking about. All right, I'm going to answer maybe one or two more. Let's see. I think he entered the house prior to 1:47 and only decided to remove the doorbell camera when he realized he had to move her out the front door to pull the getaway vehicle in front. I don't disagree with you there, but I think, in my opinion, that's when he's doing this, though. Let me find it. See, I think he did walk up to it. I think this image of him coming back around, I think that's coming from the right side. I think that the reason it's darker is for one of two reasons. One, it's probably because of either the camera just turned on, and when the camera first turns on, it's going to do some weird things, and or two, Nano's described peeling back layers of surveillance like an oil painting to get to the video that they had. In this situation here, this one still image that they have. Do they have more? And is this affected by that scraping that he mentioned? Oh no. But one of the things that you'll see is, see that light right there? When I had Mark the Shark on, he was showing us a view from his drone camera. And back there, from this angle, back there is a house. And right there is where there's some windows. I don't know if I have it, where I have it at. See, look at that. It's right there. And this is also in this image here. So when when Steve lined it up, you can see these reflections. These reflections, that's what it is. It's a reflection of the moon on the windows. And so if there was no moon up there, there would be no reflection for the moon. And if this was a drastically different time, then the moon wouldn't be able to reflect off of the windows, because it would have been a different part of the sky. Even if it was a different day of the week or different day of the month, it'd be in a different part of the sky. So just food for thought for that the reflection that we're seeing is the light reflecting from the moon. Now, is it the moon? Like, can you see the moon reflecting in the glass? Probably not. And so, but for it to shine like that, there's got to be a moon out there for the light to come through. So that was one of the things that we had noticed. And so, what we think is happening in this image, and I wish I had it, because he had I guess I deleted it. I have to find it again. But Steve had sent me a video where he was able to line up the screen and then darken it. And you can see all the stuff in the background. Oh, here it is. And how everything matched. You see how the light moves right here? That's on this image that he has superimposed. So I strongly suspect that's the same night. And I think this is the first time when he's walking up and he's doing all that stuff. That's the first time he's walking up. I think this is him coming around the side. That's the second time. That's when he disconnects the phone or the camera, which I think he probably was already in the house already. I think this guy also got dressed outside of her house. You know, I think he was conscientious of the idea of DNA and things of that nature. And I think he got dressed outside. The big evidence against that is the positioning of the gun. You're not going to be able to drive with your gun like that. Now, could he have just had, gone dressed up and not just had the holster on? Probably. Yeah, that's possible. But he's still getting dressed outside to put the holster there, right? He's doing something. So I think he may have gotten completely dressed out there. That's why they can't find any of his DNA, at least anything that sticks out that is his DNA, even though he had a mouth camera, a mouth light, which is insane that he didn't leave DNA behind. But all righty, guys, we're almost 2 hours into it. And I told my wife this is probably going to be a 30-minute show. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody. I'll be back on Tuesday night to talk more about either this case or one of the other cases that we're talking about. There's a lot of news that are coming out. In fact, one of the scientists who was part of the group of scientists who have gone missing that had some tie to either secret government programs or in this case, Los Alamos lab, they found her deceased. And so we might talk about that on Tuesday. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go check out Married to the Hobby. I'd appreciate it. We just put out a short today. The other day we put out another short with Little Rogan. She came out. So go check that out. I'll see you guys next time, y'all. Thank you guys for being here. Peace out.